Welcome back to the Now Morning Show. It's time to shine a spotlight on strategy.
Inside your spotlight this morning, we have the Managing Director of Development Consultant Company Limited. No stranger to the Now Morning Show. At this point, he might as well be a co-host. Mr. Richard Solomon, good morning to you, sir.
Good morning to you, Rokas. I don't know if I have the qualifications.
I mean, you could talk.
That's all it takes.
I mean, being knowledgeable is a factor as well,
helpful.
right?
That's helpful.
So this morning, we're talking strategy.
Yeah.
What exactly is strategy?
In its simplest terms, strategy is how do you get from one place to another. So as an organization, it would be what are the competitive moves that organization would make to outstrip its competition or to accomplish whatever it's set out to do, whatever its purpose is.
Right. So how important is strategy making for a business?
Very important, because we need something to align the entire business to. You know, organizations, I mean, people will glibly say an organization simply exists to make money. In the case of the private sector,
yeah.
In the public sector, there's some kind of mandate that you want to deliver. But how we arrange everything and what are the major areas of focus, those things are very important. You can make money doing all kinds of things.
Legal or illegal.
But
the vision and mission, what role does that play in your strategy?
Right. So the vision is, where do we want to go? You know, what's our ultimate sort of way of being, you know, the way we would like to see ourselves exist in the future? What are we trying to create? The mission are the big areas of focus. So these major areas of focus are the areas that we will focus on and execute in the pursuit of our vision.
Okay, so then do you develop the strategy and include that, or do you do that and then base the strategy on that?
So, I mean, people talk about it differently, but we anchor everything to the vision.
Right.
So if we say, where do we want to go, and strategies, how do you get from here, where your current state, to there where we want to go, then you first want to develop that vision.
Usually where you want to see yourself.
Where you want to see yourself, yes. You know, I mean, whether it's to create a better world, you have organizations that say that, to organize the world's information, that's Google, etc. So that's usually those are the first pieces, the vision, mission, and then we also include values. What's really important? What's at the heart of the organization?
Tell me about the ways to develop a strategy then.
So there are all kinds of ways to do it. I have had boards say to me, look, we have a couple of days, can we hammer this out in a couple of days? It's not impossible to do. Right. If you have large organizations, though, you want to talk to your stakeholders. Because why do you exist? You exist not just for yourself, but you exist for them. So typically when we help organizations build strategy, we're going to speak to the major stakeholder groups. So that's going to be staff, management. If there's a board, usually there's a board. If it's government, then we want to talk to the minister, members of cabinet. We want to talk to major customers, even suppliers, sometimes even people who, you know, lend you money, your debt, your creditors, etc.
Yeah.
So the major stakeholders, you may even go out to the community. So if you have something like a library, for example, it would be useful to find out what do schools want? What does the community expect of a library? Because that may be different to what we think it should be.
I'm asking in the context of a private business, right? And if it is that we're saying we want to talk to the stakeholders to develop a strategy, but we're creating a product, or we have a product that is not on the market. Nobody knows that this product exists, or that they need this product, or that they want this product. How do you develop a strategy for something like that?
So that's more of an operational strategy, because what you're saying is we already have a product existing, and the strategy, I imagine, would be how do we get the market to want it or to purchase it. That's a little bit different to when we talk strategy at an organizational level, because that may be, okay, what are the tactics that we will use? What would be the 5 Ps? Where would we place that product? Who do we want to be seen as associated with it? What are the right places to get it in? What is the target market? So that's a little bit different. When I talk strategy here, and the way I'm framing this conversation is really at the corporate level. So there's such a thing as departmental strategy or tactics, if you want. But I was really speaking about more the corporate strategy.
So the corporate strategy, does it tie into those smaller strategies,
Right.
or does it feed into it?
Perfect. So yeah, absolutely it does. So when we set strategy at the corporate level, the next step would be, what do the various departments or divisions, if you want, need to do in order to make this big corporate strategy occur? And that gets divvied up in all kinds of ways. If you are in finance, then you will have some things to do. It might be how you manage accounts receivables. If you are in human resources, ensuring that we have the right people to do whatever it is. Because remember, strategy making is easy, strategy execution is hard. You know, so it's getting all those pieces in place. What is my role? My being the department, that leader, that division, in making this big corporate strategy happen.
Why is the execution part so difficult?
Because it's the human behavior that gets in our way. If we never made a new strategy, people would come to work every day and do something. People are busy, right? Doing something. So strategy is really about making changes to how we operate in some way. And humans usually don't want to do that. We usually like to stick with what we know. Nothing feels like success. So if we've done a particular thing in a certain way for a long time, it is to get the execution going. And it's now asking humans to be different, to behave differently, and asking their leaders to lead them differently. And that's the challenge.
How do we overcome that challenge?
Well, so we start with what we just talked about in terms of driving it all the way down. So you want to have large strategic initiatives. So what are the big pillars of the strategy? And then who does what?
Just give me an example when you say big pillar strategy. What are some of the big pillar things that can apply to any business?
So, for example, if you are, let's say, a car dealership,
right?
Let's say you're a roll-on, roll-off car dealership.
Right.
Roll-on, roll-off car dealerships can also bring in new cars. They might say, well, we want to focus on a particular part of the market. That's a big initiative, a particular part of the market. Maybe we want to focus on sort of small SUVs, which are very popular, given the structure of our economy, right? So that would mean they need to find certain types of suppliers. Those cars are a little bit more expensive than the cheaper roll-on, roll-off ones, so that availability of US, so now that gets divvied up in terms of those moves or execution
to get to that place.
To get to that place.
Okay.
TTT, for example, might say, culture is a big part of obviously,
right.
But to whom? So you might say, well, one of our big pillars is to ensure that we support and drive the adoption and the awareness of culture in Trinidad and Tobago and across the Caribbean. That's a huge pillar. But then how do we divvy that up so that the different departments are doing what they need to do? So big pillars that connect to the overall strategy. Yeah.
Okay. All right, so we have the big pillars that connect to the overall strategy. How does the input of the staff, the other stakeholders, the people who might not be a part of the corporate management, for example, how does their input get filtered into that strategy?
So the first thing is to recognize that there are things that those people at the deeper levels of the business know that corporate management do not know. They have a sight, a frame of reference that
working
others,
knowledge.
Exactly, that others don't know. They see strengths and weaknesses in the business that others don't know. Same for your customers, external stakeholders. There are things that they want from the business, for example. How they interact with the business, they would want to be different. There are things that they would like. And remember, who's executing? I mean, corporate management has a role, but when this gets divvied up and drilled down, the execution is in the hands of the staff. So you need them involved in the process, because it cannot be you make something that is divorced from the people who are expected to execute it. They will go like, okay, why, how come? And if sometimes organizations will bring in an external person to develop the strategy, not to facilitate the development, but to actually develop it, right? And if you don't talk to the stakeholders, namely the staff in this case, then you're handing them something without properly understanding. And that gets even worse if the person who developed it doesn't understand the business.
Or the industry that they developed
Correct.
it for. Yeah.
Absolutely. And then that creates all kinds of problems in terms of disengagement. You get a lot more resistance at that stage. So we go back to what we were talking about in terms of execution.
But what would the benefit be to the corporate management of having somebody instruct the staff as to what the new strategy is without having proper knowledge of the industry?
There are leaders who think that there is no requirement to speak to those at the deeper levels of the business. Yeah. Because, you see, you remember we come out of a scientific management paradigm. I think you do. I tell you what to do, right? So if I have all the smarts and all the brights and all the whatever it is, I can come up with something and say, here you go do it. And in some cases, that works to a degree, but when you're asking the organization to turn a corner, you need all hands on deck. And you get less hands on deck when you don't involve the people. So you have to involve them. But, I mean, you don't have to, but it's wise to involve them. I would recommend it strongly.
Is that just for the private sector? Does that same strategy making apply to the public sector?
Works for the public sector. So we're working on a strategy right now for a company in Antigua. And when we started the stakeholder engagement, I said, we need to talk to staff. I need the unions present.
Right.
Need to talk to the cabinet, need to talk to management, need to talk to your major creditors, your major customers. We have to talk to all those people. So it works it's for the public or private sector.
But when you talk to these people, what are you talking to them about? What are you finding out?
We're asking what is their experience with the organization.
Right.
We'll put it into buckets, right? We're asking them what do they want from the organization? What do they see as some of the major gaps that the organization may be having? And because they sit in different places, and two, they have different perspectives, you would be amazed to how that tapestry finds itself woven together. It tells an amazing story about the organization. It's not slanted in the direction of, let's say, management, who often want the organization to look better than it is. It's in their best interest, well, maybe not best interest, but it bruises their ego. You know, if you say, well, okay, this thing not working out here, or people are having a horrible experience because they are running it. Right. But we want a real picture, because remember, strategy making has to do with getting from here to there. You have to know what here looks like.
And you have to accept what here is.
Correct.
Yeah.
There's dysfunction in every organization. And many times, if you don't speak to the variety of stakeholders, you don't uncover that dysfunction, which impedes execution. Because if we don't know what here looks like, then we don't know exactly what we must do to get to the destination we're going for.
So in terms of how long it takes, as you mentioned just now, that a company came to you and said, we have a couple of days to get it done. Yeah. But in terms of all those stakeholders that you need to talk to, collating all this information, getting the story right, and then changing that story now into what would become a strategy.
Right.
How long, ideally, if you want to say we're taking the time to do it right, to turn this corner properly, how long does it take?
So the development of the strategy, and I should say, in the case of the weekend kind of a thing, small organization, they probably had 25 staff. Important, but small. They had 6 board members. We could do that. Right. Management were there as well. So we could have done that, develop that. But typically, the clients I work with are large organizations. So if hundreds of staff, if not thousands of members of staff, I would say a reasonable time frame is about 3 months. It could take longer if the organization is not doing its part. Because remember, for me, I'm the facilitator of the process. We are guiding. We have the models. We know the questions to ask. We know how to put this together. But you, members who work in the organization and other stakeholders, you understand the business and the industry better than we do. Yeah. So they have work to do. And we have had cases. We had a case where an organization took 9 months. Why did it take 9 months? Because they had all these delays on their end. They apologized to us because we were ready to go, but because we're not going to develop it for you. Right. We're going to guide you in the.
And that's what I was going to ask, because, like, for me, it is we have all these concepts and these ideas, right? We have stakeholders. So, for example, the same example you use of TTT. Right. If we say that we want to be, pushing culture forward and all that stuff, there are external factors to consider. Like, if we take Carnival as an example, there's the Pan Trimbago, NCC, and all these other organizations that also deal with the same aspect of things. And how do we then mitigate or manage for whatever shortcomings they may have in terms of sharing information with the people developing the strategy and all those challenges?
Yeah, in my experience, stakeholders who are not competitors, and usually they aren't, are more than willing to share. Okay. They see the organization as an important entity, as in terms of how they do what they're supposed to do and where they want to go. So they want the organization to do well. So I have really not come across a situation where stakeholders say, look, we're not willing to share, we're not willing to put forward our opinion. Actually, it goes in the reverse. Oh, I'm glad you came. We want to tell you.
This problem.
Yeah, because I try to work with them, and we struggle over here, and So usually that part is not the most difficult part, actually.
Mr. Solomon, thank you yet again for joining us and sharing your wisdom with us. We look forward to the next conversation.
Looking forward to it.
Ladies and gentlemen, Richard Solomon, Managing Director, Development Consultant Company Limited, just sharing some thoughts on strategy and how to approach it. We'll take a quick break and come back with more in our morning show. Stick around.